Hello and welcome to the fourth video of my series about transforming my garage into my dream workspace. As you guessed it, this video is going to be all about insulation. So I'm going to share with you my approach and best practices to insulating a garage or really any structure. In this video, I'm going to cover insulating windows, air sealing walls, insulating walls, air sealing the roof and providing a baffle for ventilation, insulating the ceiling, as well as insulating the garage door itself. So let's get started. I'm going to go after the low-hanging fruit first, and that's the windows. So for that, you want to use some window and door specific spray foam. This is a minimally expanding foam, which is not going to bend your window frame, causing the window to bind. So what this is going to do is insulate the space between your window and the rough opening, and also air seal it. So as it stands now, I did a pretty good job sealing this window from the outside, so I don't feel any drafts around the perimeter. But regardless, it's going to provide some R value in terms of insulation. Now before spraying, what I like to do is apply blue painter's tape around the perimeter of the window. That way if I overfill it in any places, it doesn't get stuck to the actual window frame, causing like a yellow discoloration. I forgot to tape my side door when I was insulating it, and that caused a big mess which I still have to clean up. Now before you start spraying the foam, the manufacturer recommends shaking vigorously for 60 seconds. Now we just pop off our cover, install the straw, and get spraying. One thing you want to make sure of is even if your can is empty, the foam inside the straw continues to expand and it starts dripping onto the floor. Then you step on it, you spread it everywhere. Ask me how I know. So when you're done, make sure to put it down on a piece of cardboard or just toss it in the garbage if it's empty. Next on our list is air sealing the walls or the stud bays. So what exactly does that mean? I drew a little diagram for you, and I mean there's much better videos out there that explain this, but the basics is this is your wall, right? So on the outside you have your plywood sheathing, on the inside you have your drywall or other wall covering, and then in the middle you have your insulation. Now during the winter you have cold air outside and warm air inside. Warm air tends to hold a lot more moisture or vapor, and it starts moving toward the outside and condensing inside your wall cavity against the cold surface of the outside wall. In the summer, you have the opposite effect, where the hot, humid outside air makes its way into the wall cavity and condenses because of the cold air-conditioned air inside of the house. Now, in both scenarios, you have condensation which forms inside the wall, and that ultimately affects the performance of your insulation and also could result in mold. So by air sealing my stud bays, I'm going to limit the amount of air that moves in either direction. So even if some vapor does get inside of the wall cavity, it's eventually going to diffuse out of the wall in either direction depending on what the temperature is outside and inside. So the idea is to put spray foam anywhere where your studs and your sheathing meet. So that's all around the perimeter, all around four sides, as well as any penetrations of the sheathing. You also want to seal your electrical boxes. So your electrical box typically has 4 punch outs in the back to run wires. Even if they're not punched out or they're full with wires, you still have spaces around them which will allow air to flow from inside the house into your wall cavity. So we don't want to fill the electrical box with foam. What we want to do is make sure to cover the penetrations as well as the small space behind the electrical box between the box and your sheathing. So here I have 2x4 walls, so the space behind my electrical boxes is pretty small, maybe half an inch or so. And whether you use rock wool or fiberglass to insulate after air sealing, it's going to be tough to get something in behind the outlet box. So you might as well just spray foam the entire back of it. Now you also want to seal any penetrations in your studs. So I have wires running through my studs, and you want to seal those penetrations to limit any air movement between stud bays. So we're trying to, as much as possible, minimize the drafts, minimize airflow between stud bays and in and out of stud bays, the outside or the inside. Now because I have a whole lot of ground to cover, I'm going to use this Great Stuff Pro Gun, which actually gives you better control using this trigger and also allows you to use larger cans of the spray foam itself. So let me demonstrate. I'm going to start at the top and make my way down. I don't know if you can see, but I have huge gaps between the sheathing and the top plate of my walls. So I'm going to have a larger bead up there. Then I'm going to put regular small beads along the sides, along the bottom, and then do my outlet box as well as the penetrations. Now that all my stud bays are air sealed from the outside, it's time to install the actual insulation. So I'm going with some R15 fiberglass insulation, and they come in bats. It's pretty straightforward. You just put it in the stud bay, staple it on, rinse and repeat. I'm going to start with the full-size bays and then go back and fill in any parts that require trimming. It's always a pleasure working with new, fresh fiberglass insulation as opposed to an old one which is falling apart and turning to dust. Still a good idea to wear a mask and gloves and long sleeves and everything. So let's get insulating. Now that I'm done insulating all my walls, I'm ready to move things onto the ceiling. So my approach to insulating the ceiling is going to be slightly different from the walls, and the main difference is I need to introduce some ventilation. So I have ventilated soffits both at the bottom and the top ends of my roof. And the purpose of a soffit baffle is to create a small channel between your roof sheathing and the insulation itself to allow for ventilating out any warm, humid air and prevent condensation. Now they do make products specifically for this purpose, either made out of foam or some sort of plastic. However, I'm not a huge fan because they don't allow you to really fully air seal that space. And you're still going to get outside air getting into your rafters and into your rafter insulation. So I drew a diagram to explain what exactly my approach is going to be. Over here we have our roof sheathing, and on the sides we have our 2x8 rafters. So this is a cross section. Along both sides of my rafters, I'm going to install 1-inch spacers, and then to those spacers, I'm going to attach 1-inch foam board that you see behind me. Next, I'm going to air seal the space between the foam board and my rafters using some spray foam. And then the remaining space is going to be filled in with R21 fiberglass insulation that you see right here on the left. Now the 1-inch spacer is obviously going to be 1 inch thick. The 1-inch foam board is going to be 1 inch thick. That leaves me with 5.5 inches, and that's exactly how deep this insulation is going to be. Now the combination of the R5 foam board with the R21 fiberglass insulation is going to give me a total R value of R26, which is going to be really good for the garage or really for any space. Now for the 1-inch spacers, I'm going to use the plywood you see behind me. It used to be part of the loft that was above my head, but I decided to take it apart because I have better ideas for overhead storage. So what I'm going to do is set my table saw at 1 inch and rip a bunch of 1-inch strips from these pieces of plywood. And that should give me enough spacers to cover the entire roof. As usual, that was a little bit more complicated than expected, but I should have enough spacers to cover the whole roof. I also cut several spacers at 4 inches, and these are going to be installed at both the bottom and top ends of the rafter bay. And the purpose of these is to hold back the vertical piece of foam board. So I don't need them to be structural or anything like that, just a guide so I don't push it in too far, and I know roughly where it needs to go. So I'm going to start at the bottom, install my vertical pieces vertically, install my horizontal or rather diagonal pieces diagonally along the roof. Then I'm going to go do the same thing at the top end and then install some spacers somewhere in between. I don't need the spacers to be continuous. I'm going to be air sealing it all with spray foam. I just need something to create that uniform 1-inch gap in every single rafter bay. All my spacers are in place and I'm ready to install the foam board. My rafters are spaced 16 inches on center, and in a perfect world, every single rafter bay would be exactly 14.5 inches wide. Unfortunately, that's not the case here. I measured a couple of random ones and they would range anywhere from 15.25 to 14. So I'm gonna have to cut every single strip of foam board separately just to make sure that it fits the exact rafter bay that it's meant for. Now I'm going to use just a regular knife to cut the foam board. I don't need the lines to be perfect, but I do want to have a nice friction fit in every single rafter bay. Now I'm going to try to bevel the edges of the foam board just so I have a nice space to fill with the spray foam later. So let's get started and see how it goes. Alright, so that took a little bit longer than I had expected, which seems to be a recurring theme in this whole project. Now that I have my rafter bays insulated and air sealed, I'm ready to stuff the remaining cavity with this R21 fiberglass insulation. Now I want to note that just with the air sealing that I did, I already see a huge improvement in terms of comfort inside the actual garage. So even with the temperatures below freezing outside, I was able to get a nice comfortable atmosphere in here just using this small little space heater. Now obviously once the fiberglass is in, it's going to be even better, and this is just a good sign of things to come. This is definitely going to be a challenge of getting the fiberglass bats into the rafter bays, specifically because I have the lights running perpendicular to them, so I may need to remove them, but we'll see how it goes and take it from there. Done. Man, my shoulders are killing me, but I'm glad that the sealing is finally done. Next, I'm moving on to the next and last chapter of this video, and that's insulating my garage door. I saw a video by YouTuber Learn to DIY comparing different garage door insulation options, and the option that he found to be best is simple rigid foam board. So the depth of my garage door panels is 1.5 inches. I picked up 1.5 inch foam board. So the process is very simple. I need to cut it to size, apply some spray foam in the top and bottom of the cavity, and then slide the panel in. Now there are a few small complications, with the main one being that the actual frame of the garage door panel, in the case of this left side, I have this piece of framing which I need to slide the panel behind, and there's also a piece of frame on this side which it needs to go behind as well. So in this case, I'll probably just cut 2 pieces, slide one into that side, and then slide this one under here, and then push it in. On this side, however, on the right side, I only need to slide it behind here, because here it goes flush. So to start, I'm going to cut the panels to be the right size, do a test fit, and then start with the spray foam and putting them in. Now keep in mind, if you decide to insulate your garage door using this same method, you may need to adjust or replace your springs. I'm going to be converting from extension springs that I have currently to a torsion spring setup, and also installing a jackshaft garage door, so I'm going to leave these for now. And that concludes the insulation part of my garage transformation series. In the next part, I'm going to be finishing my walls. I'm going to be talking about what material I chose to go with and why, and as usual, showing you the whole process. So see you next time.